So it looks like I might have a bit of a tangent before I resume my Angel of Darkness playthrough. Look, at what we have with 3 games in the collection, I play around with each of them for a bit, seeing how they are, toggling back and forth. Oddly enough, I was kinda pulled into Chronicles. There were many elements about it that I was enjoying, and in some ways it even reminded me of similar elements to Siphon Filter 3, if that makes any sense. So if you have Tomb Raider on the brain, which for me for the last several months has been about all the time, with it being even higher now with this remaster being so fresh, I did some digging into some of this game, and I was kinda surprised that Chronicles is often considered many people's worst entry out of the bunch on the PlayStation. So with that, I felt like it would be fun to discuss this and open this discussion to all of you, who definitely know Tomb Raider in many respects much better than me, on how Chronicles may have gotten this sort of a reputation, and maybe some of my personal thoughts on it so far as well.
Ah, the Philosopher's Stone. One of Lara's early conquests, and one of her most challenging pursuits, if my memory serves me.
And Rome still bears the scars of that little episode.
Ah, she was never one for diplomacy, Lara. But she certainly knew how to paint the town red.
So as me, a first-timer with a lot of these core design games and not having beaten one of them yet, I'm trying to correct that as we speak too. So when looking at Chronicles, as I understand it, is sort of like a game that has a bunch of mini stories within there, which then has an ending that sort of hints, winks, and nods about what happened to Lara at the end of the 4th entry. So in that sense, we get these short stories, or rather mini stories and adventures, involving our favorite treasure hunter. All of this is being done through a storytelling device of having people who know or even love her, all sort of honoring her memory with these tales. As a story setup, I really love this. It's cool and a really good vehicle to tell a video game-like story. You can have more episodic type of stuff fit this very well. We need context for our gameplay and a good excuse to sort of bop around to different environments and situations without having them all be connected like a traditional narrative format of the prior ones. This incorporates a fun storytelling device to tell its narrative to the player. Something worth commenting on too is how I absolutely miss the cheese from the good old days, especially as it came to the voice acting and the dialogue. There is an old school charm and even humor at times that is weaved into many of these games from this period. Sure, some do dip into the so bad it's good with its delivery, but at the same time, it adds to the specialness of those things. Like, I wouldn't want these things to be changed in that respect. You need to keep these versions available as a time capsule. I even got a kick out of some of the laughs I got from one of the early cutscenes.
It ain't over till the fat lady sings. Fucking Bronco, baby!
We ain't gonna make that gap, boss.
We'll make it.
Ain't gonna.
We'll make it.
What did I tell you?
Mon Dieu!
Now to my limited knowledge, Tomb Raider titles were essentially coming out one on a yearly basis, which honestly was kind of a common occurrence when you look at the games from that generation, where things would be years apart or even decades now. Back then it would be a year. The turnaround was pretty quick. As I understand it, the publisher wanted to have another annual release of Tomb Raider, which would end up being the final one on the PlayStation. There was even some friction between the developer and the publisher on this title. It sort of reminded me of another situation that happened to another great franchise with Siphon Filter 3. That game we got wasn't really what Ben Studios had initially thought of for that project, but Sony had bought Ben and wanted one more PS1 entry before everyone shifted to going into the PS2. It was during that in-between period where not everyone had jumped aboard to the PS2, and many were still playing on the PS1. In Siphon 3, it had a similar story setup, where most of the game is told in these episodic kind of vignettes of sorts. The team said that at the time this was done because of how rushed they were to make this game, and it was the best way to actually tell the narrative under those conditions. I say all this because I wonder if something similar happened to core design, like behind the scenes, that led them to taking a similar narrative approach. Now, does this excuse people's issues with the game? No, not at all. If you don't like it, that's fine, but I find some of that extra context kind of interesting, and maybe there was another reason for why decisions were made for Chronicles that we saw. One day I might look into this more if the information has actually been disclosed. So back to the title of my video, is Chronicles a bad game? Personally, I don't think so. I will disclose that I have not beaten the game yet. Of what I've played, I actually enjoyed. It's fun. Now, from my perspective, I am sort of playing these games out of order, and some opinions at the time were that this game really didn't further any of the Tomb Raider formula for some players. So in that sense, I have seen some people refer to this title as being more of a DLC package rather than a full-on entry, an expansion of sorts. So for those, it would seem that maybe Chronicles was a bit too much of the same for them. If we can transport ourselves back in time, I can totally understand people's opinion on that. Like, look, at this point you were pretty much getting a Tomb Raider title every year, and now this was the 5th one. Some people at the time too were not too happy with how 4 ended, not really having anything definitive for their answer. So that could have played into their frustration with Chronicles as well. So as a player at the time, you're a fan, but now you're at the 5th game. You might be expecting something new, or what they would add to it. What people probably wanted was what they were potentially doing with the PS2 at that point, but one more game was made in that classic style, and by some accounts this was another one rather than a leap forward or something like that. I may be wrong on all of this, but I'm trying to put myself into the shoes of someone who played it at the time. I am sure that putting out many sequels for something like this, while impressive in number, probably did wear on the team at some point, especially as I understand it that maybe core design maybe did not want to actually really make Chronicles, and it was more of a publisher mandate. Based on what I've played with it so far, it would seem that it speaks to the craftsmanship of that core design team. They were able to squeeze every last drop out of the original formula before they moved to the next generation. So in that sense, the good bits, parts, or even the whole game, depending on where you fall on this, was from this talented studio and how they were still able to bring it, in that sense, even under those conditions. I think in that respect that has got to be commendable. I'm not excusing the issues that people have with this title, or even brushing them off, more of a discussion than anything else. And hey, I might even change how I feel if I continue to fully play this one now or maybe later on. The bits I have played I did enjoy. I miss that old school cheese and charm with some of this stuff. I think even if I end up not enjoying anything outside of this Rome area, I would still praise this part because honestly, I think it's genuinely good stuff here. A really good start to this game as well. Exploring a known real-life place in an unknown game setting is very compelling. Yes, it's more urban, but not the traditional urban because of where it's set, and you are doing many of the same staples that are very enjoyable of its time. You are figuring it out, no hand-holdy exploration. You're all alone, isolated. You're still putting 2 and 2 together, and those rewarding aha moments are found here as well. It's intriguing, exciting, and still very much classic Lara. Now, returning back to the point of this video, where do you stand? I want to hear from everyone on this, and start a bunch of conversations with all of you in the comments. As it pertains to Chronicles, where do you stand on it? Is it one that you hate, love, or even just think it's fine? If you're a fan, what stands out to you with this title? If you hate it, unleash all of it right here. I want to hear and read it all. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're interested in supporting the channel, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you can help to keep this channel going strong, and this allows me to be able to do more for my awesome audience. Please check out the links in the description and pinned comment for ways to support the channel. And most of all, thank you very much for watching.